Good morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters with me, Dr. Audrey Tang. My co-host is Judith Crosier, and this is the show where we take a deep dive into all things mental health and well-being. No subject is off limits, and today we are going to be having a very uplifting guest. We are going to be talking about aging well, and this is what Dr. Denise Taylor works on. She herself calls herself an elder, an adventurer, as well as a coach, and the focus is on getting rid of these aging is bad stigmas and really embracing the privilege of growing old. Morning, Jude.
Good morning. You're looking very glamorous. You look lovely today.
Thank you.
We always do, but yeah.
It's that whole thing about, getting older and you need to do something.
Oh, I know.
It's one of those subjects where, as much as I know it is a privilege to grow old,
yes.
It absolutely is. Yet everywhere I look, anti-aging, turn back the clock, it's all so negative.
Yeah, it really is. Do you know what I think it is? I think we're all afraid of getting old.
Yeah.
But when you think about the alternative, as you said, it is a real privilege to get old. And we've had guests on before who are, in their later years, but oh my goodness, what energy. And, they're just amazing people. Yeah. And they obviously were when they were younger as well, and they've carried that through. And they haven't kind of fallen into the stereotype of slowing down and becoming old. And I know as well, we don't all have that luxury. Things happen when you get older, don't they, physically? And but yeah, I think it's a fear, and that's why people don't want to address it.
Sort of relating to that, about getting older and remaining physically healthy, do you think we do need to start thinking about it a bit earlier, and rather than kind of thinking, oh, I'm young now and I'm fit and I'm healthy and it's a long time away?
Yes, and I tell you what we did this week, my husband and myself. He is 3 years off the age where in the UK you can take your pension early. So he can essentially take his pension 12 years earlier than the old age pension. And so we've been looking at that, and how depressing, because you realise, actually, if work stopped tomorrow, we don't have enough pension to live on. These are the private pensions, not the government pension. So, yes, is the answer. We need to start thinking about our older age much earlier, because if we'd have done this 10 years ago, when I first met him, or 12 years ago, when we got married, we'd be in a much better position. But you think, pension's ages away. And then when it's kind of just around the corner, it gets scary.
You make a really good point about thinking about the administration side of things, because that is something that we don't think about a lot. But there's also, as you get older, you might have to deal with something in the UK we call the lasting power of attorney, where if you lose capacity, you need somebody to make decisions for you and things like that. To even be thinking of that, you need to consider earlier what you actually want to happen to everything. And I know it seems really depressing to talk about that, but you're absolutely right. If you start planning it at a time where it's just a conversation, it's almost a lot easier.
It's a lot easier, but again, it's not a very nice thing to talk about. And so I think fear kind of stops people thinking about power of, who shall I appoint as my power of attorney, and pensions, and planning for your old age when you are in your maybe 30s or 40s. It just feels like an alien concept, because you don't perceive how you can be that age. But obviously, if you are lucky, everyone does reach that age.
Yeah, and then when you do reach that age, I think there is again the stigma of age, where people are almost being made to feel irrelevant.
Yes, and that's it. It makes me really cross and really sad to think that that's how we in general treat our elderly people who have done so much for the country, essentially, in their work, etc. And it's almost like, you get over a certain age and healthcare isn't as easy to access. Or it's you're not given the same healthcare as you might give the medical profession might give someone in their 30s or 40s who are more useful to society. And that kind of makes me cross.
It does. Yes, yes. Well, to unpack this topic of ageing and ageing well is Dr. Denise Taylor, and she'll be joining us just after this.
Greetings, I'm Angel Marie Monticelli, host of Energize You TV, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Go to Fresh Takes right here on E360 and get Reiki-fied and energized today.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be joined by Dr. Denise Taylor. She is an elder, an adventurer, a coach, a vision quest guide, an author, and her expertise is aging well. Welcome to the show, Denise.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, please do share your journey from where you started to where you are now as this award-winning coach.
I think the most important transition is turning 60. And turning 60, I was 60 and a half, and that was when I made the decision to end my marriage, and to suddenly come into being the person I was meant to be, rather than pretty much the whole of my adult life had been as a couple. I had to find myself. I had to start going to gigs. I made friends. And I learned about vision quests, and I learned about deep imagery, and I decided, you know what, now is the time. I'm going to do my PhD. And I started that the autumn before lockdown. So I had lots and lots of time to study.
That's amazing, actually. It almost seems to have snowballed from that one thing. I think that's incredible.
And really brave as well.
Yes.
I am so glad that and it was scary to leave my husband when I have a mother who said, how can you do this to me? You know, it was a brave decision. And I'm just so thankful that I made that move, because I wouldn't have done all the things I've done since if I was still married. I'd have done different things, but it would have been more conventional later life.
Absolutely. So that leads me on to think, what does aging well mean to you?
I think it's about being comfortable with the person that you are. And I'm not afraid to tell people what my age is. And when I didn't have grey hair, people always tell me I look 10 years younger. They don't say it now, but that's okay. I don't mind if I look my age. But I think it's about being comfortable in your skin, accepting that, you know, you're not got the body and whatever you did when you were 20 or 30, but having energy and stepping up to a different role in society. So rather than trying to pretend you're still a teenager or in your 20s, thinking, you know what, this is what it's like to be this age, and it's okay. So that younger people that I meet will say, I want to be like you when I get older. And that is like one of the best things that anybody could ever say to me. I like it when they say that.
Amazing.
Yes, yes, I agree with that. And I think, well, what, first of all, with the thought that you want people to say, you know, I want to be like you when I'm older. What about some of the more backhanded compliments, the more kind of, oh, you're really good at that for your age. Yeah. You look really great for your age. How do you manage those, first of all?
That's really interesting. And I picked it up, somebody else who said it. I can't remember her name now, but she's the one who wrote the book, My Chair Rocks. Because when anybody says to you, you look good for your age, you look them straight in the eye and say, and you look good for your age too.
I love that.
Amazing. Simple comeback, but effective.
But to be honest, to me, it's rare that anybody ever says that. But other people have said, I hear other people say it, and I teach them that that's the response to do. And it's a right backhanded compliment. I mean, when people used to tell me I look young for my age, I used to say, well, this is what 50 looks like. You know, we don't all, you know, we're not all in sort of cardigan and slippers at 50 or 60 or 70.
Or actually, sometimes we can be in cardigan and slippers at 16 and it's fine, you know? I think it's called bed rot, isn't it? Or something. Goblin mode. But there is such a stigma around age. And what I love is your energy, your vibrancy, and the fact you really embrace, we were talking about the privilege of getting older. How much truth is there in seniors becoming a bit of the invisible population?
You know, when people say that you're going to be invisible when you get older, in a way, it's quite nice to be invisible because you can just get on with doing anything and people just ignore you. But I think what a lot of people do is they start to get frightened and they start to lose confidence. And I think particularly if you've been somebody known for your looks, you know, you were always the attractive one, then it's much harder. I was never, that one when I was younger. So, but it must be really hard. It must be really hard, you know, when you've been the most beautiful girl in your school and in your 20s and 30s, and suddenly, you know, you're thinking you've now lost it. So that's harder, and I think that makes people lose confidence, and they feel invisible. And if you feel invisible, you act invisible. Whereas if you think, you know what, I'm here, and that you still speak with confidence and you try out new things and you've got things to say. Because I think there's an awful lot between what goes on externally and what goes on internally. Because if we think, oh, I'm a bit past it now, and oh, I'm not going to try anything new, and oh, maybe I shouldn't. Well, then you're giving out this vibe of, you know, you're going all sort of inwards rather than, hey, bring it on. I mean, we're not all like that all the time. And I still have quiet days. But I think generally it's the impression you want to give.
Welcome back. Dr. Denise, we were talking before, and I know that you've written books on positive ageing and working after you're 50, in your 50s and beyond. What are some of the key things that you would like people who are approaching that age maybe, and also employers, to recognise about getting older?
As a psychologist, a lot of the work I do with people is around mindset. And a bit like, if you think you're too old, then you are. And if you think you're not going to get the job, well, you probably won't. And I've just bought a new car that's much bigger than any previous car. And I was even saying into myself, this car's too big for me. I'm not going to be able to drive it. And then I had to stop this voice in my head and going like, you're a competent driver. You've been driving for nearly 50 years. You can drive this thing that's like a tank, which I can. Within the workplace, if we go in there thinking, oh, they're not going to want us because I'm too old, or well, maybe I should dye my hair and things like that, you're again giving out all these views that, well, why would I employ you? And I think also what I find with a lot of people with their CV, first of all, it goes back to being 16. People don't really need to know your O levels and things like that. So you have to de-age your CV, and that helps. But you also need to keep up to date, because a lot of people just blame employers, and it's not always the employer's fault. You know, it's that you've been in marketing, you never quite got around to doing a qualification because you didn't need it, or now you've been made redundant and you do need it because everybody else has it, and you feel you're being discriminated because of your age. No, you're not. It's because the last time you did any study was 1984, and you know, and they're thinking, well, if they can't be asked to, pardon me, if they can't be bothered to say, you know, to do any studies and keep up to date, then why would we employ them? And a lot of people, when they go to interviews, they're going like, well, I think we should. And, you know, they've been interviewed by somebody 20, 30 years younger than them, and they just feel like they're being told off. It's like their parents. So you have to recognise what your role is going to be. So there's things on both sides that people can do. But being older, we've got knowledge, we've learned things, the rough edges have been have been taken away, we feel much more confident generally in talking with people, and we're calmer with people. We don't have this rage that sometimes, younger people may have. Not always, but
Interesting point, because you're absolutely right. It's very easy in all the discussions we have sometimes to blame the other side for whatever it might be, and we do have to take some responsibility on ourselves to think about the vibe we're putting out there, the energy we bring to a situation. And there is something about how we look that does come into it when it comes to judgment, but it works both ways as well, because I've worked with people who are under 25 years old, but because they look a little bit older than they are, that causes them stress. It causes people stress when they are 45 plus, but also look much younger than they are, because again, you get treated differently. So do you think there's a difference between being old and looking old and feeling old?
I mean, we can't really change what's happening outside, can we? So I think a lot of it is the thoughts that we have. And one of the beauties of studying was going back to all proper research papers, not just basing it on what you read on articles that you've seen online that might have just been made up. But there's some research by Dr. Becca Levy from, I think she was Stanford, might have been Yale. And she said that if you're optimistic, you're going to live 7.5 years longer than if you're not optimistic. And that's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So just having this optimistic view makes so much difference. And, I fell over the other day. I didn't have a fall.
We were talking about this recently, yeah.
But at a certain age, she's had a fall. But I fell over partly because the pavements are really uneven, and partly because I was distracted and I was thinking of things and I wasn't really paying attention to where I put my feet. And I could have fallen over at 30.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I do need to sort of actually look where I'm going if it's a rickety pavement.
I did exactly the same thing a few weeks ago.
Yes.
I fell over. I'm refusing to admit I had a fall. I didn't. I fell over.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get back up, but
it's the language we use around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I mean, how do we challenge our own negative stereotypes about getting older, and also probably we see more the negative stereotypes we see across the media?
We have to call it out. There was an advert on LinkedIn, and that was I don't know, something about, it was just so a put down to older people that we can't learn new stuff. And lots of people were complaining to LinkedIn, and they finally did take the ad down. I can't remember all the detail around it, but we need to complain. We need to say something. We need to not just accept it. And then the media decides that they're going to, and adverts, that they're going to put things in there and use older actors and models. But then these ones that are, they're windsurfing and they're climbing mountains. And it's like, but that's not most of us. So these are, and they're always impossibly beautiful. And it's like, yeah, but that's not real. And I don't think that's really helpful, but we need to call it out. But we also need to call it out in ourselves, because anytime we say to ourselves, oh, I'm too old to do this, that's when we need to sort of stop that voice in our head. Stop the voice in our head that says that, because you're never too old and it's never too late. The only time it's too late is when we're dead. But, we could be in our 90s and decide we want to study for an Open University degree, or we want to go on one last big adventure. We might need to make adjustments, but we can continue to do anything if we put our mind to it. So we're never too, I walk around telling people you're not too old, wherever I happen to be having these conversations. So I think we should call out the message in ourselves and call it out in other people as well, because they might not even realise it. You go to a shop and it's like, oh, I can't wear that because that's what young people wear. You can wear anything, whatever.
Yes, yes, but there are so many of those articles. Women over 40 shouldn't wear this. The one I love is just simply saying women over 40 shouldn't wear the burdens of other people on their backs, and I think that's absolutely right.
Exactly.
Now,
That's a good one.
Yeah.
what I love about what you're saying is you're absolutely right. You're never too old to do anything. Yes, you may need to make adjustments. I know somebody in their 70s who's going wing walking for charity, which is just brilliant.
Yeah, amazing.
Now, one of the key things that people have said is sometimes maybe they do look younger than they seem to be, but their body is still getting older. How do we look after ourselves physically better, and how do you look after yourself physically better?
I was talking to a medical doctor around this area, and he was saying that people cycle 10 miles into the surgery and they can't understand why they've now got this pain because they're super fit. And it was like, but all this stuff you're doing can't stop your body aging. We can slow it down a bit, but we can't stop our body aging. So I think often we go through our younger years thinking we can eat anything, do anything, abuse our body with too much alcohol and not enough sleep. So it's as we get older, it's like, are we eating well? Are we exercising more? And I do think I know it's really important that we do strength stuff, because we need to be able to pick things up. But we also need the flexibility so that when we do fall over, we can get up unaided. Because that's what frightens me, that you get on the floor and it's like, I always want to be able to, even when I'm 100, hopefully, I still want to be able to get up on my own.
Yes,
even if I have some sort of aid.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's so much fun chatting with you. This is really positive, and I think we absolutely we need to hear this. Yes. And do you know what? I'm so happy to have you on here, Dr. Denise, because we have had comments from our viewers who've said it's lovely to have content for people who are getting older because they do seem to have been left out. Yes. So we're keeping you, and we will be back right after this.
A world without the arts is one without confidence, creativity and community, and yet funding has been reduced every year. Arts programmes have been shown to benefit social inclusion and well-being, particularly for marginalised groups, with projects fostering a sense of belonging, cultivating mutual understanding and breaking down social barriers and isolation. Participation in arts programmes can help boost confidence and open doors to opportunities that may otherwise be inaccessible. Click Arts Foundation offers grants up to £2,000 for grassroots arts projects twice a year, with our community arts experience trustees meticulously scoring each project on impact and sustainability. To date, we have supported craft and visual arts projects, dance, drumming for well-being, and preservation of heritage and culture. If you share our passion, not just for maintaining the arts themselves, but contributing to the many benefits it can bring, please consider making a donation to Click Arts Foundation registered charity.
Welcome back. I'd really like to know how people who imagine they're too old can restore that sense of adventure. My husband does it all the time, and he's a bit younger than me, and he says, "Oh, I'm too old to do that," and I say, "No, you're not," and that's something that he started to say it. So how can I kind of change his way of thinking? How can we change our way of thinking and restore that sense of adventure?
I think, sometimes people, well, first of all, sometimes people were never adventurous. They were always very...
Well, yes.
True.
Yeah. So if you weren't adventurous when you're younger, are you going to make a radical change as you age? But sometimes it's little things. So sometimes it's about just, I'm going to step outside my comfort zone. But it doesn't have to be this massive thing. It can be a smaller thing, and you just... Maybe the first time you go to the cinema on your own, and another time you go on a day trip on your own. And, I'm just talking about doing things alone, because that's often what people want to do, because it's often easier to do it with somebody else. I went to Kenya in February, and I had to take my own tent, and that worried me. It worried me. Crawling into a dome tent, I hadn't done it for years. And that was hard. And I was doing sort of yoga type activities to get more flexible before I went. But they did put a chair next to my tent. So as I crawled out of the tent every morning, I could use the chair just
Oh,
to help me
amazing.
get
Great idea.
and so that was sort of making an adaptation. But I think, if you think now, oh, I'm probably too old to do it. Well, imagine in 5 years' time when you're looking back, you, you're definitely going to say you're too old then, but you'll be thinking like, I should have done it 5 years ago. So I think
Yes.
all these different things. I mean, why not go for it? Because what's the worst that can happen? I mean, you'll adapt. If you can't do something one way, then you'll find another way of doing something.
Yes, I fully agree with you. I teach burlesque, and my class is largely women over 40, some over 50, some over 60. And we do adaptations, or they will do their own adaptations of all the moves, but they're still there and they're still shimmying their stuff, and it's brilliant. And it's a lot of fun. So you're absolutely right. We do adapt. Now, relating to this, your deep imagery work. Now, this is not something we've ever discussed on this show because it's something that's quite new to me. Would you mind sharing a little bit about this work that you do, please?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because sometimes, and I think one of the things that keeps us young is being curious and exploring new things. And I came across deep imagery, and somebody did a session with me, and then he said, as a psychologist, I think you'd be really good. And it was a 3-year training program. So I did the 3-year training program, and I finished that last year. But people often know about guided imagery, where you go through relaxation, and then they say, we're going to take you through a wood, and you're going to see this butterfly, and you're just going through something that somebody else has done. The difference with deep imagery is you're doing it all yourself. And it's based on the work of Carl Jung, a famous psychologist, who was really interested into our deep unconscious. We've got this collective unconsciousness that we all share. So it's based on a theory with some practical implication. So what happens, one of the first things that you do if you're doing deep imagery with somebody is clearly you need to sort of get into a form of relaxation, because you need to be open to what's going on at a level beneath your consciousness. And you get animal guides. And if you were just making up that everybody would want an eagle or a bear or a tiger as their guide, and it's surprising what comes, because it might just be a mouse, or it might be an ant, so it could be. But and I have a penguin as one of my animal guides.
Love it.
And it's like a penguin. But they're with you. So sometimes when you almost say, I mean, I'm trying to talk this very simply because I could talk for so long about it. But if you're feeling a bit scared, but if you've got your penguin or your big dog or whatever with you, and I don't want it to sound like it's your imaginary friend, because it's much more than that. But you've got somebody that gives you the confidence or whatever it might be that you need to go through and do things. And you can use deep imagery to deal with trauma. You can use it to heal yourself. You can deal with it to help for personal development. There's loads and loads of ways it can be used. But it's all about what's happening within. And most of us, when we're children, and we have our inner world, and then we grow up and we don't have our inner world anymore because we're sensible, because we're now grown-ups. So it's getting back into that inner world. So it's truly a fascinating thing to do. And I'm so glad that I trained to do that. And it was like, you see, another new thing that I did after 60.
Beautiful.
It's fantastic. It sounds so interesting. I'd really like to learn more about that. But so what issues might your clients come with, and how do you help and support them?
Yeah, often it's around a personal issue. So I'll just use one person as an example, and their relationship with their children was not going well. And one of the things that you can do is have your inner guide meet their inner guide, and then their inner, and so it's not like you're there talking to your son about why is life so difficult with you, but it's more as when the inner guides get together, and this person, they curled up together, and it was like they never actually spent time just being together. It was always activity. And so when the animal guides were doing that, and then the conversation later is, but we never do just like sit on the sofa and do nothing together. He's always in his room on his phones, and I'm always shouting at him because he never does this. And you know, through other means, it might have come out that that was a thing to do, but because it's the animal guides coming up with the idea, somehow it's an easier thing to come to. And it's just different to standard counselling or therapy.
Oh, it's
wow.
beautiful. And it actually reminds me, if anyone's seen the film Everything Everywhere All at Once, there's a beautiful scene where both Michelle Yeoh and her daughter, they turn into rocks. And it's a similar sort of conversation. It's this deep imagery. It's
wow.
kind of absurdist as well, but it gets you talking. And everything that you're talking about, Dr. Denise, it's about grounding. It's about finding your own source of comfort. It's just a different way of doing it. And I think a lot of people will find that very, very appealing. So thank you so much for sharing that. Could you give us some of your top tips for staying well, aging well, and being well as we get older?
I think the first is we need to embrace aging, because if we're not getting older, we're not here. And see it as a stage of life. Because, you know, if we think about, you plant a seed and it grows, and then, you know, it at some stage it comes to the end of its life. And the same with us, but all the different bits that are important. And I think a lot of people just want to stay being young. They want to stay in the mindset of like a teenager forever. Whereas I think if we think about the different stages, and if we think about, actually, there's an importance. If you think about more traditional societies, you know, they've got the elders of the village, and whenever any of the trouble, they go and see the elders who have seen it all before, and they're wise, and everybody listens to them because they're seen as people with wisdom. And in the Western world, you know, it's less so. But I think there's a need for people to step up to being older members of society, where and I think this is really important. It's not telling people, because I've seen it all before, this is what you should do. Nobody wants to be told what to do. And I think as we get older, it's about listening more and saying less, and only giving a view when somebody asks you. And when I was doing my deep imagery training, Des was sharing at the beginning, and what we were always told was, just because you can say something, it doesn't mean you should. And a lot of times in conversations, you know, it's me too. You know, you're telling me about all your problems. Me too. And it's like, that's not actually helping you. And I think this is one of the good things about older, is recognizing you don't have to say it. Just your presence is enough. And I think that's one of the useful things. And I write about the difference between CV, resume virtues, you know, all the things that get you the job, and eulogy virtues, which is what somebody will say when you die. And nobody's going to say, she was great at Excel spreadsheets. You know, he was really good at striking a deal. Nobody cares. But if they say, you know what, Audrey, she was so kind. Audrey had this wonderful smile. You know, and they, you know, refer to Robert as somebody who always had time to stand up for the underdog. They're the things that people say when we're dead. So they're the things that we should be spending more time on. And I think at the beginning of our lives, we're too busy getting the promotion and getting career success. And then one day you wake up and you think, you know, that wasn't important at all. And now what's important is what I'm giving back to society. So I think that's really useful with aging. It's about moving on to a different stage. But a lot of people don't see that, and they just still want to be like teenagers. And I think they're missing out if that's what they do.
I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that. And yeah, you've made me have a slightly different perspective on things. So thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared and for your insights, Dr. Denise. Where can we find out more about you?
Okay, various websites, but probably the easiest one is denisetaylor.co.uk.
Thank you.
And I also write on Substack as Dr. Denise Taylor.
Amazing.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you so much. Confidence Boost today, I thought I would pick up on something that Dr. Denise said, and this is all about pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone, because it's so easy to get into a place where we just sit there and go, oh, but I can do it tomorrow, or I won't regret not doing that, or I'm feeling too old. And if you imagine the comfort zone is the bit that we spend the most time in, and we like it, that's why it's called the comfort zone, we're very comfortable there. But just beyond that is another zone, and that zone is known as the stretch zone. Beyond that is a further zone, and that zone is known as the panic zone. Now, what can happen very easily is if we go too far out of our comfort zone, we actually skip the stretch zone and go straight into the panic zone. And that's when, say, we might start a new exercise regime when we haven't exercised at all before, and then we go out for this 5-mile run and drink green juice the whole time, and that's it. Of course, you're not going to keep that up, and the body is going to straight away go into the panic zone. You might do yourself an injury, you won't feel great, and you're going to go right back to the comfort zone and say, I think I'm going to stay here. So take a leaf out of the exercising book. Stretching is not a bad thing. And stretching is something we need to do regularly. And the more we stretch, the easier it becomes. So whilst in your comfort zone, try and do something every single day that pushes you into the stretch zone. Whether it is watching a YouTube video on learning a new skill, and then maybe the next day trying it out. You don't have to go really far. You don't have to be brilliant at it. You don't have to be an expert, but just giving that a go. It's about taking those baby steps. It's about doing that little thing that stretches you every single day. And it doesn't have to be the same thing. It doesn't have to be academic. It doesn't have to be business related. It doesn't have to be creative. It can be a choice of any of those different things, as long as you're doing one thing that just pushes you into that stretch zone. Because if you do that enough, what you will find is soon stretching, soon pushing yourself out of that comfort zone gets natural and gets easier. And then the comfort zone extends and becomes the stretch zone, which means that the new stretch zone was what you originally thought was your panic zone. So try that. One little thing to stretch yourself every single day and grow your comfort zone into your stretch zone. Welcome back to the last part of Mental Health Matters. It's the part that I think I enjoy the most, where we reflect on what our guests have said and take our top tips. And there are a few today.
There are a few, yeah. And you know, I've always kicked against getting older. It's not, I mean, like Joey in Friends, if you're a Friends fan, like, why, God, why? It's, yeah. But I have to remember it's a privilege to get to a certain age. You know, I've got friends my age that haven't had the fortune to become older. So I know that I'm really, really lucky. But I've never said I'm too old to do that. So, and I really hope I don't. But what I have noticed, you talking about comfort zones in Business Boost, is that I think my comfort zone is getting a lot smaller. So although I'm not consciously going, I can't do that because, you know, I'm not 20 anymore, I think subconsciously I am doing it. And so that's my takeaway, to push my comfort zone, push the boundaries.
I love that. That is really interesting. And also, from speaking to Dr. Denise,
yes,
what I loved was just her uplifting attitude.
Exactly. So that follows on from what she was saying, and then you kind of condense that in your business boost.
It's a mental thing, isn't it?
Yes.
If you go in vibing you're too old, you might have kidded yourself, you're not thinking it and that you're not saying it.
Yes.
But if you feel it, that doesn't lie.
Exactly.
And I think that's brilliant. And I do love this idea of the deep imagery.
Yeah, that's something I've never heard of before.
No, I mean, as I said, I saw it in the film or an approximation of it.
Yes.
But the idea that the one guide can speak to another guide, it's very much like the sand tray, you know, where you put the animals in a certain position and this one represents you, this one represents your mother or your father or something, and then they have a conversation. It gives you that once removed. But I can see how deep imagery fits with mindfulness. It gets you into a probably a more relaxed state and frame of mind. It's less formal even than the sand tray, and I can see how that would be really effective for a lot of people.
Less confrontational as well.
Yes.
So yeah, like you say, you're further removed from it. Yeah, it's a concept that I'm trying to get my head around since, you know, Dr. Denise mentioned it. I'm thinking, how would that actually work? But it's fascinating.
It is, and that's what we love about this show. We love the experts that come on because we get to know about so many different things. And the one thing that we always say is it's not one size fits all. If you know broadly what the options are for you, you might find the one that fits you. As always, thanks for tuning in and have a healthy week.